Welcome to the Breakfast Leadership Show, where we interview global thought leaders on business, leadership, and life. Here's your host, keynote speaker, best-selling author, and chief burnout officer of the Breakfast Leadership Network, Michael Levitt.
Welcome back. I've got Dr. Beth Kaplan on the line. Beth, how are you?
I'm great. How are you doing, Michael?
I am awesome. I've been looking forward to this conversation for a long time. I actually looked on my calendar the other day and I was like, wow, I think we originally started to line this up back in October of 24. And I'm like, okay, that was a different world. It's like, yikes. But, it's always funny when I have people, book and they book, way back. And then we finally get on there. It's like, well, what we were going to talk about is actually needs to change to this because of XYZ. So why don't you share a little bit about you and then we'll jump into the conversation.
Well, thank you so much for having me. And to everyone out there, hello. I've been a big fan. So as you can imagine, this is an honor. I'm Dr. Beth Kaplan. I'm a researcher, author, and I like to say champion of all things belonging. So typically you will find me doing research and talking to people about their sense of belonging, how they construct it, and how we really can brave the workplace better. So my study of belonging goes everywhere, not just your professional lives, but we do tend to focus on the workplace.
Yeah, belonging is such a critical thing and we all long for it. If we see let's say we're at a conference, for example, and you see a group of people laughing, having a good time. For most of us, our natural inclination is, oh, I want to be a part of that. I want to go into that. Now, for introverted, you're going in the other room. You're like, I'm out of here. There's too many people in here. But for most people, they're like, well, okay, what are they laughing about? You just want to be part of it. We want to be part of community. It's just kind of how we're designed. And one of the things, and I don't like talking. Well, I shouldn't say I don't like talking about it. The pandemic, for a period of time when we were all separated from each other, it really brought to light for a lot of people how important community is because we were told we really couldn't gather together. And for a lot of people, that was a disastrous period of their life and a lot of trauma that is still unaddressed for many people. I see it all the time. And for other people, like the introverts, they said other than, the unfortunate nature of the number of people that lost their lives and everything like that, they enjoyed it. They loved the isolation. Like, okay, I'm going to take a step back and relax a little bit. But belonging is, again, one of those critical things, not just, out in the community or in your family or friends or things like that, but in the workplace. You don't want to be lonely at work. It's a horrible feeling. I've been there and I don't enjoy that at all. I love being included in things. Doesn't mean I need to be included in everything, but you want to feel like you're part of a team. And unfortunately, in many organizations, you have these silos that create over time, and then you just have people really struggling.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, I think that it's a really interesting thing you bring up because work isn't just about the tasks and the paychecks. People want to feel like they matter. When employees experience belonging, they engage more, they collaborate better, and they stay longer. Without it, people check out mentally. Sometimes they leave entirely. And we know, Michael, that there's so many impacts, not just mental, but physically, right? So mentally, without belonging, employees experience increased stress and anxiety and self-doubt. They can also, unfortunately, turn that into fatigue and headaches and sleep disruption and all the bad things, right? So it's become more and more important as companies are also on top of that saying we are the destination for belonging, which has some really tough ramifications associated with it. And if it's aspirational only, right? So making sure that we're not imposing belonging, which to your point, that left out, that terrible feeling makes us feel even worse. Truly, if we think something's wrong with us, that we're not feeling it, but other people around us are.
And when you bring that baggage to work every day where it's like, I don't feel like I'm part of the team, but then you go and you're doing the work. Deep down, we want to do a great job at whatever we're doing. And there's that hindrance or that, that basically feels like shackles in many cases where you're just being held back or you don't feel motivated. It's like, oh, why should I bother? They don't care about me anyway. All of a sudden, that just creates a huge ripple effect. And quite frankly, can be contagious because if other people are seeing that, Next thing you know, you've got a handful of people that are starting to behave that way, and all of a sudden your performance metrics start to decline. Quality of your products or services starts to decline, and next thing you know, you're scrambling. You're like, what's going on? And how come we're not hitting our numbers? And instead of digging into what's causing it, there tends to be more of a reaction to it where there's discipline, performance improvement plans, extra hours, some more work, who knows? Just all these different things they throw at it. And in many cases, because the managers don't know how to manage. I'm not saying that as an insult. I'm saying that as a fact. They don't know how to manage because they were never taught and they never sought to learn. So often we delegate, well, the company should teach me how to do this. Yeah, but the reality of it is they may not do that because of resources. They may not do it because they don't have time. They may not know how to train you. They don't want to bring in an outside organization to train you. It's up to you as an individual to be the best version of you at work, home, life, everywhere. So
Yeah.
it's on you. And let's say you do it yourself. You invest in yourself in professional development. Company doesn't reimburse you. You pay it out of your own pocket. You're going to benefit from it in life anyway. So it's something you got to consider. But we see it time and time again where great employees leave, with the turnaround. We've heard of, the great resignation. We know all that. And even in a time right now where jobs are, depending on who you talk to, are a little iffy. Certain sectors are stronger than others, but a lot of people are just, they're not engaged. And I think it was a Gartner study that was released not too long ago. It's like almost 2/3 of employees are just completely checked out. I'm thinking, we're going to have so many recalls on things because they're not there. So they're going to make mistakes. So the stuff we're buying is not going to be good, or it's going to be faulty, or who knows. And it shouldn't be that way. And it doesn't have to be that way. And that's, why your work is so important.
Yeah, thank you. And I think what's interesting, I'm hanging on some of your words around being checked out. I think on top of it, and I know something you talk a lot about is not only just checked out, but they become burnout, right? And that burnout happens when that mental and emotional cost of staying engaged outweighs the benefits. We know that burnout leads to cognitive decline, emotional exhaustion, depression, and then, of course, there are all the physical ramifications for it. And as you mentioned, there's an ongoing debate whether who's responsible for that. Is it the company? Is the employee? I always say it's both because if you're going to put it out there that you're the destination for family, which is, I mean, ugh, it's you want to make sure that you're taking care of that family, quote unquote. And we do know, as you mentioned, that the leaders are the number one impact on an employee's sense of belonging in the workplace. Now, that being said, you nailed it. Most of us aren't psychologists that are leaders in the workplace. We don't have that training, but we're still being expected to really own the care of our employees, which we should. But care has a really, really large spectrum. And I think for any of the leaders listening out there, that's important to note that care is more than thoughtfulness or kindness. Um, and if you want to look at it just through that lens alone, that thoughtfulness and kindness could be candor, right? Clear as kind, giving honest feedback to make people better. Um, Advocacy is kind and care, right? Speaking your name or your employee's name in a room that they're not in for opportunity. There's a large spectrum. Um, at the same time, leaders themselves also have to understand their own sense of belonging. That's huge, right? Um, I loved I love the whole concept of psychological safety. And one of the things I think as leaders we should also explore is what happens when our sense of safety is off. It impacts the way we lead, the way we show up in our personal lives and professional lives. So it's not just when you're clocking in and out. And I think that's a real topic to be explored moving forward because I'm willing to bet most of the managers out there are burnt out already from not understanding how they coach and grow people, how they get the best from them, and how they stay sane at the same time.
Yeah, the levels of burnout, go all the way to the top, even to the point where I think it was a couple years ago, there was a study and it indicated that about 7 out of 10 executives, C-suite executives, were strongly considering leaving their roles. And okay, when you have 7 out of 10 companies and their leadership wants to leave, anybody that's ever worked for a company where the CEO leaves or senior vice president, high level positions, when they leave, that is extremely destructive, excuse me, to the organization. Might be a good move if they weren't the right fit for the organization, but even then, there's this period of time where you're like, okay, what's the new leader going to be like? What changes are going to be made? Everyone gets kind of anxious and concerned, and of course that impacts productivity too. It's so funny how the brain has such huge impact on how we do things.
Oh, yeah.
Just worrying or doom thinking type of situations where people just start going to the worst case scenario. And a lot of times that's just the amygdala being annoying. But for the most part, I love picking on the amygdala. My nickname for it is Amy G, and I just like telling Amy G to shut up because, and I understand why it's there. I mean, I always joke, the reason why I passed biology is Mr. Burrell didn't want to see me another year. But I understand the importance of it and why it's there. But time and time again, we see organizations struggle when the leadership is struggling, and you go, okay, why are the leaders struggling? And could be the board of directors or whomever they report to, they might be struggling, and it starts flowing down. And when I first started this organization, I was working with mostly C-suite executives and all of that, because they were burning out and all the fun stuff that they were dealing with. But when I was visiting them in their offices, I'd kind of look around the office and I could gauge, because I know what burnout is. I've had it. I know what it smells like. Doesn't smell good or taste good. And I'm looking around and I'm looking at the people like, hmm, this looks to be contagious, because it seems like a lot of the people here are going through the same thing that they are. Like, wonder why. It's just because it flows through. If you're struggling with something, unless you are really self-aware and can compartmentalize, which is not easy to do, that will come through in your interactions with others. And if you're burned out, you might be more short fused than normal. You might say something that isn't, you know, caring in a way. And that can have, of course, really damning effects if not addressed. So we see this, and you can see healthy environments go absolutely toxic a lot faster than you think.
Yeah. I mean, I'm going to say that one of the silent killers in any organization is the term resilience. When we talk about this burnout, and a lot of the times, it's the lip service that comes with the term resilience, which really, resilience is an amazing thing, but it's often used as a scapegoat when people place blame, or they say you just have to get through something and suck it up. And that's, that fake it till you make it mentality is damaging. And, you know, to your point, people look to their leaders in times of change. That belonging uncertainty that sets in, though, is incredibly toxic and traumatic for people. Um, when people talk about resilience, it typically means it's going to fall on you to change things or make do with them, right? And not just at the individual level, but at the leadership level, it's becoming a really big problem in the workplace, and just shows us we need to get to the root cause of things, because if we don't deal with them, they're just going to linger. That's it.
Yeah, for me, resilience, when I think of that word in a work setting, in my first career, other than the grocery store that I worked at when I first started
I
work,
was Foot Locker, by the way. Yeah.
there you go. I worked at a family grocery store. If that grocery store was still around and I could make enough money to survive, I'd go back and do the job. I love that place.
Yeah.
But again, I was a teenager. Maybe I wouldn't say the same thing now. I don't know. We'll see. But after that, I worked. Got my degree in accounting, so I worked as a public accountant and worked for a CPA firm. And at the time of this recording, it is now tax season. And those are some hella long days. And that's where resilience comes in. It's a window of time for a few months where you are working some really long hours, very tedious, receipts coming to you in paper bags or plastic bags or shoe boxes or socks or whatever they happen to bring them in. And you have to do it over and over and over again. You're going through so much, and working day, night, weekend, and you have to have resilience in that. And that's one of those things where it's like, we know what tax season is. We know it's going to be very busy from end of January till the middle of April. It's just going to be an absolute marathon. And what you need to do is you have to prepare yourself. That is the reality of it. And I think a lot of times where people get in trouble is they ignore the reality of the situation and they go, okay, is there anything that we can change about this reality? Now, tax season, no, short of them abolishing the IRS. I don't, and who knows? But who knows? I don't have a crystal ball. Or, I can use an online magic 8 ball, but that's going to be about it. But long story short, we know that's the reality of it, and you cannot change that. That is the situation. Now, in many workplaces where there's a lot of stress and burnout, things like that. Okay, what is the reality of it? Okay, what can we do as an individual? This goes from the leader all the way down to the front lines. What can we do as an individual to be the best version of ourselves in spite of these situations? What can we have control over?
So
And
I
but
always think that's me when you talk about what you can control, I think it's meeting people where they're at, right? It doesn't mean that necessarily you are going to have to you change things for every single person around you, but it's making sure that you look at people outside of this little box and you understand where they're at, what other things in life that you're looking at, and then what makes it easier for them to do their job. If you're a leader out there, that's your job then becomes to remove interference and to clear things out, and also sometimes to take care of that lip service we talked about from the company. You reminded me, one of the biggest things that happens when you're in a state where you need to be resilient is companies will break out with the most ridiculous things, including do more with less. I mean, my goodness, that saying alone gives people hives. Telling employees to do more with less is a fast track to disengagement and resentment. It causes chronic stress, helplessness, and anxiety in the name of doing better for the company. And a lot of the times you have employees that go one way or the other. They will either go all in and then they're sacrificing their well-being, or they quit. And I'm not sure, there's a toss-up of what's more damaging, you know?
yeah, it reminds me, during the Great Recession, a lot of organizations that survived cut back a lot of staff, and they told people, when things get better, we'll bring them back. Well, spoiler alert, they didn't, and they still haven't, because they operated with, well, look, we got this work done with this amount of people. Why would we bring in more? Because they're not thinking of what's going on. It's so funny is organizations will spend a ton of money on maintenance of things, equipment, all that stuff. They'll have the cycles. Say, okay, I got to make sure that these things are maintained, but they won't do it for their people. And they need to, because without your people, those machines aren't running. You won't have to worry about maintaining them. Occasionally you'll have to dust them for non-use, but you're not going to have anybody. So it's an ongoing thing. It's not a set it and forget it. I think as humans, we are conditioned for this instant gratification. This is done. Okay, check. Next, 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 next kind of thing. And it's like, no, that we're life is messy. It's supposed to be.
Mhm.
But it's also an opportunity to be creative and an opportunity to
Right.
grow and explore and do things. And organizations that are healthy, usually you see environments where there's a lot of opportunities to be creative,
Yes.
to think outside of the box, to look at different things, to try things a little bit differently, and really, kind of you hear the phrase, flatten the org chart kind of thing. And again, that it's another one of those catchphrases where it's like, okay, you say that, but what, how are you living that? Is that real, or is that just another one of those posters in the boardroom that is supposed to motivate people? Uh,
You belong here, like
yeah,
those cookers.
exactly. Or here's the mission, vision, and values. You go into most companies, okay, what's your mission, vision, values? Alright, you could even go to the board. What is it? I did this once. I asked the board members, "Okay, what's the mission, vision, values of this organization?" And we were in the boardroom, and they were actually on a poster behind where they were sitting, and they couldn't come up with it. And the beautiful thing is, who came up with those mission, vision, and values? That board. So it's like, you don't believe in your own stuff.
Yeah.
Like you can come up with catchphrases, that's great, but ultimately it comes down to, and one of those board members in another board meeting, when the board was coming up with all kinds of different ideas of things they could do, he finally stood up, which usually boards are sitting down. He stood up and he goes, "People, we have one important question to ask ourselves. Who are we?
Right.
Why are we here? Not as a board, but as an organization. What do we do?" And it's one of those things where I think a lot of people need to ask that. And if you go around a lot of teams, you're in many cases, unfortunately, you're gonna get multiple answers. And you're like,
Yeah.
okay, all right, well, I see where the issue is. We got people running around in 15 different directions. This ship is not going to be going anywhere but in circles.
That's
How
right.
to, so, what are your thoughts on that?
Oh, I just think it's incredible because you're totally right. Organizations fail most of the time because they assume belonging in this case looks the same for everyone, right? And when you really serve everyone, you serve no one at the same time. So to your point, seeing a poster on the wall isn't going to do it. The barista handing out coffee is still not going to do it. It's really your actions and how you model that as well. And a lot of the times that comes in the form of respectful boundaries, which I've seen really go out the window these days because employers are nervous about how employees will react. And at the same time, employees are really nervous because it's not an equal playing field, right? It's hard to speak truth to power and to be able to say, okay, Michael, you're my boss. And I know I need to get this done, but I also have my son's basketball game tonight, right? What do you think is going to go out the window first? Because we feel the need to serve that higher power. I mean, you think about it. Our parents are the first leaders that we have examples of, and they set the norms for what it means to be led and how to follow. And then you go into the workplace, and that only gets tougher and tougher as that idealism slips away and you're faced with the reality of what needs to happen and occur. So it's incumbent upon leaders to act like performance coaches, right? I don't know, Michael, if you play sports or if you played them before. I have. And one of the things I loved best about my coaches, they stopped me when I was overworking because I would physically hurt myself. No one in the corporate world has done that. They're not like, hey, Beth, get off. It's 3 o'clock in the morning. Stop working. In fact, you were rewarded for it. You're often rewarded for that burnout, if you will. So I think it's important for companies to understand and learn how to play the long game. The long game means protecting their people's mental healths. And to you made such a great point earlier. I wanted to jump on. Um, we're really great at protecting the customer and making sure that we're customer centric. But I think we need to see that shift to be to an employee-centric world. Without your people, you're nothing. So how do you make belonging? How do you make all the things that you're saying a reality, right? How do you make sure that you live those values? I'm going to be willing to bet if that board would have actually lived the values and the vision they were talking about, they may have remembered it a little differently.
Yeah, agreed. And I love what you said about, being employee centric. If you invest in your people, you create the best environment for them to thrive. Your customers are going to get better stuff than if you're focusing just on what we're doing for the customer. Guarantee it. I see it time and time again for those handful of organizations out there. I'm being sarcastic. There's more than a handful, but yeah, maybe a couple handfuls that are really doing really well, and they take care of their people. And as a customer, you sense that the second you
Yeah.
walk into their establishment, you realize right away, this is a different place. It's like,
There's an energy.
yeah, it is. And it's like, how do you do this? Treat people right, meet them where they're at, understand that everybody's an individual, and you create, again, environments that are nurturing to everyone's needs. Can it be done? Yes. Is it challenging? Yes. Is it worth it?
Yes.
Yes, it is. It's critically important. So, Beth, on this conversation, I'm sorry.
Yeah. No, I was just thinking, it's moving past the superficial efforts, right? Where those companies are posting slogans and boards up. And as a client, to your point, you see that right away. When you see it when you go into someone's office building, you can feel it. So well, these belonging issues are around, like I feel like it's a domino effect. It keeps going and going as we are trying to figure out as a society how to really make sure employees feel protected and then they can give their best and in turn to others, the company themselves. But what's really important is they don't sacrifice themselves in the process.
Absolutely. And in closing, it reminds me, the last medical clinic that I ran, there was someone there who'd been with the organization for a long time. Her name was Leslie, and I always called her boss. She's like, "No, you're the boss." I'm like, "No, no, 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 I know better. No, you're the one running this place. So come on, don't play me. I know who's running this place." And we did that for years. Do I believe it to be true? Yes. Was I the leader? Yeah, of course. But you know what? It's like, no, it's like and many times, like, okay, how, like the phrase, what would Jesus do? It's like, okay, what would Leslie think? And it's like, and it's like, okay, is this going to fly? And, um, a couple of times to be like, no, no, it's not going to be there. So really love this conversation, Beth. Where can people find out more about you and all this amazing work you're doing?
Oh, wonderful. They can go to drbethkaplan.com. You can go to Belonging at Work, which is a LinkedIn group that I run. I run a newsletter of the same name. And then, of course, on Instagram. And, I just want to keep these conversations going so people feel a little less alone and understand their sense of belonging and how to thrive.
Definitely have all that show notes. So, Beth, thanks again for your time. Really appreciate it. Love talking with you.
Thank you so much, Michael.
Thanks for listening to the Breakfast Leadership Show, part of the Breakfast Leadership Network. Visit breakfastleadership.com for tips on empowering your business and your life.